Good morning to everyone that is joining, and welcome to today's Data.europa Academy webinar. I'm Flora Copelou, and I work at the Publications Office of the EU, specifically on data.europa.eu, the official portal for European data, who is also the organizer of these webinars. So for those of you who are familiar with our portal and our work, you know that our core mission at data.europa.eu is to highlight the potential of data and foster its use across Europe. So for this reason, we continue our sessions, and today's session is part of our ongoing series on data spaces, where we explore the experiences, challenges, best practices, lessons learned, and use cases from the implementation of sector-specific data spaces. In previous webinars, we discussed, for example, the European Retail data space and the Common European Mobility data space. This time, our focus will be on two critical initiatives, the European Health Data Space and the Common European Energy Data Space. So both of these initiatives aim to improve data accessibility, security, and interoperability across Europe. So during today's session, we'll cover essential aspects of both data spaces, including key regulations, policy, the importance of data interoperability, and privacy considerations. We'll also hear valuable insights from presentation on Health DCAT-AP, where we will also look at the Common European Energy Data Space and share use cases on demand-side flexibility and interoperability network projects. Before we dive into the agenda and to introduce our speakers, here are our housekeeping rules. So this session will be recorded, and both the recording and the presentation will be available on the Data Europa Academy and will be shared with you via mail during the next few days. So no worries if you miss something. If you have any questions during the webinar, as you already do, please feel free to use the chat, and we will do our best to address them either during the presentation, if they're very short, but we will have actually a dedicated Q&A session in the end, where we will collect all of them and we will address them to the relevant speakers. We would also greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to complete the survey that we will share with you after the webinar. As you already know, your feedback is incredibly valuable and helps us improve our content and have better future webinars. So as I mentioned, I'm fortunate to be joined today by a panel of experts in the field of data spaces with impressive backgrounds. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. First, we have Dr. Melody Bernon, a medical doctor with specialization in public health, who serves as a policy officer and seconded national expert in the digital health unit of the Directorate General for Health and Food Safety at the European Commission. Melody is directly involved in negotiating the European Health Data Space regulation and overseeing the implementation of projects such as European Health Data Space 2 pilot project and the Towards European Health Data Space 2 joint action. Next, we have Pascal Derrick, who holds a PhD in physics and has extensive experience in IT, GIS, and data management. Pascal has worked at the European Commission's Joint Research Centre, contributing to several projects, and currently works as a data engineer at Science Seno, where he contributes to the FIRI and Health Data at EU pilot projects. Next, we have Stavros Stamatukos. Stavros holds a master in electrical engineering from the National Technical University of Athens and a master in energy system from the Business School of the University of Amsterdam. He works as a policy officer at DG Energy of the European Commission at the unit in charge of digitalizing the energy system. He oversees the deployment of the energy data space as well as the deployment of artificial intelligence in the energy sector. And prior to the Commission, Stavros has worked for more than 15 years in the private sector in the deployment of energy infrastructure projects. We are also joined by Professor Antonello Monti, Director of the Institute for Automation of Complex Power Systems at Aachen University and Professor at Fraunhofer FIT, Center for Digital Energy in Aachen. Professor Monti has coordinated several key European projects, including Twin EU and IntNet, focusing on energy transition and digital energy innovation. Finally, we have Shivam Kashyap. Shivam is a research associate and project manager at the University of Applied Sciences of Upper Austria, where he focuses on advancing sustainable energy systems and digital solutions. He also serves as a visiting lecturer in energy and IT domains at the university. As a core team member of Project EDI, he contributes to enabling seamless energy data sharing across Europe, fostering innovation and efficiency in the energy sector. So we are very excited to have all of you with us today, and I know that our audience will find your insights invaluable. So now let's take a quick look at the agenda. We've already had this quick introduction. And next, Melody and Pascal will present the European Health Data Space and the Health DCAT-AP for the next 30 minutes. After that, Stavros, Antonello, and Sivan will present on the Common European Energy Data Space and the related use cases for another 30 minutes. And finally, we will have a dedicated Q&A session, as I mentioned before, at the end, where all of the speakers will address questions you might have throughout the presentation. Please feel free, as I mentioned before, to submit these questions through the chat at any time during this session. And before giving the floor to Melody, just to remind to everyone that is joining right now that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording, both the recording and the presentations will be shared with you in the upcoming days. And without further ado, I'm giving the floor to Melody.
Thank you very much, Flora. Good morning, everyone. I'm super happy to be here with you today to introduce you to the work we have been doing on the European Health Data Space. I will be setting the scene for Pascal, who is the expert on the matter on the topic of the interoperability of metadata standards that we have been working on in the European Health Data Space. So, just for a start, I'd like to, with this beautiful slide packed completely, just to remind you a little how the idea of the European Health Data Space arose. When the previous health commissioner was nominated, she received a mission letter from Ursula von der Leyen, who specifically asked her to establish the European Health Data Space per legislation. In parallel, in DG Connect, the Commissioner Thierry Breton received the mission letter to set up the data strategy with horizontal regulations such as the Data Act, the Data Governance Act, and then a series of sectorial data spaces, including health, energy. All of this you are very much aware. But then the COVID pandemic came, and we noticed that it was very difficult in Europe to get organized to collect and reuse health data for monitoring, surveillance, but also for research on COVID. And with the big impulse COVID gave, the College of Commissioners made the decision that we would need to start with the European Health Data Space. So the Commission proposal on the legislation on a European Health Data Space is the first legislation on a common data space. That's why it happened in May 2022. The proposal was put on the table. It's a massive piece of legislation covering primary and secondary use of health data. And with intense negotiations between the co-legislators, I'm happy to say that in last March 2024, so only 2 years after the proposal, we reached a political agreement. The regulation was finally adopted in the European Parliament in his last session before the change of mandature, and we are now waiting for the publication in the official journal. So what is the European Health Data Space? What is the ambition? The ambition is to create a unified framework to facilitate the exchange of electronic health data across Europe, both for primary and secondary use. So primary use is when you use data for healthcare, essentially for providing direct healthcare. And secondary use is when you reuse the data you have collected for other purposes, for example, during care, in order to make research or policy making. And today we are focusing on secondary use. And why do we want to establish a framework, a common European framework to support secondary use of health data is, as I said, mostly pushed by the learnings we have from the COVID experience. It's to enable large-scale health research and innovation across Europe and support evidence-based policy making. And also to facilitate cross-border collaboration and data sharing across EU member states, to avoid working in silos, member states per member states. So how do we do this in the regulation? We set up a specific data governance. We set up a technical infrastructure common across Europe, and we involve all the stakeholders, healthcare providers, policymakers, researchers, and of course, patients. In practice, what does it mean? It means that we set up common European rules on who has to make which data available, for which purposes, and under which conditions. Of course, health data is very, very sensitive. You want to take the highest security and safety measures that you can. So we set up specific purposes under which you can use data, health data, for the public good. And specific prohibited purposes, of course, you cannot using with the intent to harm the people whose data you are using. You cannot use it for publicity or for commercial interest primarily. How do we do this? We set up this infrastructure with a central hub, a central platform managed by the European Commission, to which all the member states have to be connected. It's an obligation. And they also connect across each other, creating a federated network. Each member state will collect the data from all the health data holders across its jurisdiction and establish a data catalog of all the data available in this member states. And at the European level, you will be discovering a federated catalog of all those data. When you want to access the data, you have to obtain a permit. So you don't access the data easily. As I said, the data are very sensitive, and we set up specific safeguards for using the data. For example, the use of data in a secure processing environment. So why are we doing this? What's in it for a data user? A data user is basically the researcher or the policymaker. What is the advantage and the benefits of the European Health Data Space? Increased data discoverability is the main aspect. You will go to the European Health Data Catalog and you will be able to know and to discover all the data available across Europe and maybe identify all the data sets that may be of interest for your purpose. Then when you want to have access, you have a streamlined procedure. You don't have to apply differently in France, in Germany, in Portugal, and handling language barriers and juridic barriers to comply with the requirements. It's the same process across all member states with a single application form and a single permit in the end. Of course, this does not come for free. You will have to pay fees. You will have to make a transparent use of those data. You will have to follow the data protection rules of the European Union, such as GDPR. You will also have to follow the cybersecurity rules, and you will have, as I said earlier, to follow the approved purposes for this use. When it comes to data holders are the people holding the data. It's almost, but not completely, overlap with who's having the data controllership. What's in it for them? Mostly, when you first read the regulation, obligations. all data holders will have to comply with an obligation to describe the dataset that they hold so that they can be findable in the European Dataset Catalog. And when people will, when data users will want to access their data, they will have to make those data as available. But what are the benefits? Well, it's for lots of data across Europe, you don't have the visibility. You don't have the promotion of your data set. So it gives an increased visibility of your data set and a potential reuse. Of course, when people are using your data, you can charge fees. And of course, you can protect your IP rights and trade secrets as per any use across the European Union. So many benefits also for data holders. When you want to build a European central federated catalog with dataset descriptions of all across Europe, you need to have a standard that allows you to describe all those datasets in the same way. So the first, one of the first problems and challenges we had to face when the implementation of the European Health Data Space is how to build and why to build a health-specific metadata standard. You can see on this slide the 4 reasons we needed this health-specific metadata standard. It's to increase the data discoverability in the catalog, to facilitate the data sharing across the member states, interoperability, to facilitate the data usability, and of course to support for advanced technologies. Why did we do Health DCAT and how did we arrive here? And Pascal will give you all the details of Health DCAT. So we had the idea of secondary use. We asked member states to reflect in a joint action, how could we create in practice this secondary use framework across Europe? This was the joint action TEDAS. And the joint action provided a number of recommendations to help us build the aspect on secondary use of the regulation and propose a number of key items, such as the need for a health-specific metadata standard. In parallel to the regulation negotiation, we had a pilot project with including many member states, EU agencies such as EMA, CDC, and also research infrastructures. And Pascal's team developed the first technical specification of Health DCAT application profile. So this metadata standard directly specific to health. Following the pilot project, we had a first implementation in the central platform of what, with the member state, of what could be the result of these technical specifications. And we are now testing and refining the standard within a new joint action, TEDAS2, involving all member states. Once we have finalized and obtained what we want, we're on this Health DCAT application profile, with involving all the stakeholders, we will have an implementing act setting in stone the use of this standard in the European health data space, and then we'll have continuous updates. So why did we chose to do Health DCAT? Why did we choose to extend DCAT application profile? For 3 main reasons. DCAT is a proven framework. It's an established standard. It's widely adopted for data cataloging. It's flexible. It's easily adapted. And we have also the immense work achieved by the SAMIC community on DCAT application profile. So by building Health DCAT, we added some specific properties and vocabularies to DCAT to improve the standard and to make it health specific. And it's also with the broader thinking that if all the members, the data spaces build on DCAT application profile, they can be interoperable and share information between them. Pascal will dive deep into these aspects. What I want to tell you very quickly is where we are in the legislative process. We are now waiting for final adoption because of the change of mandate of the Parliament in December. And we are looking to publication in the official journal in the beginning of early 25. when it comes to application, the clock only starts ticking after the publication in OJ. You have 20 days after for entry into force, and then we enter the transition period. And when it comes to secondary use, we have 4 years to be ready. This means that member states have 4 years to connect to the infrastructure. The Commission has 4 years to set up the infrastructure, and all data holders will have 4 years to comply with this new metadata standard, the Health DCAT application profile, to describe the data set. So we have a tight schedule, we have little time, and we will need to deliver as much as possible. I'd like to, before giving the floor to Pascal, to introduce you to how you can get involved, how you can contribute to this refining and finalization of the Health DCAT application profile. All the deliverables that we will have in the TEDAS2 joint action will undergo a public consultation, including the technical specifications of Health DCAT application profile. There will be 3 waves. The first wave will be in January 2025, and you will have the possibility, everyone will have the possibility to provide feedback. In TEDAS2, we will also organize in parallel of this consultation stakeholder forums in an hybrid format, physical and online, and the first one will be happening on the 31st of January 2025. All of this, you can find the information on the TEDAS2 website. I can put the link in the chat. Following the final deliverables of the TEDAS2 joint action, and so what member states will consider as the final version of the technical specifications for Health DCAT application profile, Commission will establish the standard in an implementing act. In the process of implementing act, you have a new public consultation. It's the standard better regulation rules at European level which apply. So you will have another opportunity to provide feedback before the standard is completely set up. So with this, I hope this was a good introduction. I'll leave you with Pascal to give you all the details about Health DCAT application profile.
Thank you, Melody. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give you more technical information about what we have done during the pilot project on designing Health DCAT. I will go through 2 main parts. The first one, why Health DCAT-AP, some rationales, and then some elements about the Health DCAT application profile in a nutshell. So let's start. Why Health DCAT-AP, European Health Data Space? So here you've got a slide about the user journey of the European Health Data Space for secondary use. What you see, the first step is crucial. It's the data discovery of health data. We need for the EHDS, the European Health Data Space, an harmonized description of health data. That's the reason why we have been developing a DCAT application profile for health. That's the first step of the user journey. Then you see add to basket. You will be, as a data user or research team, able to request access to sensitive data, for instance. So you will submit an application, a data access application form. Then you will have, if your data access application request is accepted, the data will be prepared with some minimization rules, and you will get access to the data in a secure processing environment. You will be then able to do your analysis as a research team. In the regulation, we expect the research team to produce some research output, and you will have to publish your research outcomes in a fair manner, meaning using, for instance, the EOSC data space. That's the user journey. But an important information is to look at what data is in scope of a regulation. So what you see here is this article about the minimum categories of electronic health data for the secondary use. You have, of course, electronic health records, but you have also socio-economic data, which might be described using StatDCAT, or environmental data, which might also be described with another DCAT application profile like GeoDCAT. You've got also open data like aggregated data, or you have some very specific type of data like genetic data. You have also very important for health databases, data warehouses. That's all the registries that the member states are maintaining, like the population-based health data registries. So that's the data in scope of a regulation. Here I would like to give you more information about the work we are doing right now. We have this ecosystem of DCAT application profiles where DCAT-AP is core, and that's the default standard used by the European Data Portal. But you see that more and more application profiles are coming up, and DCAT-AP is one of these new application profiles. The difference is that Health DCAT has been really designed for the open health data space. It's different from GeoDCAT, which is an application profile meant for a specific data type, which is geospatial data. That's very important information to consider, is that Health DCAT is designed for the EHDS. That's the same thing, for instance, for mobility. Mobility has been, the DCAT application profile mobility has been designed for the mobility data space. That being said, let's have a look to what we are currently doing. We are developing the central health data catalog. And you see here, you've got the link. You can already visit this website, which is under development with coming new releases. And what is important to notice here, here in the box in red, is that Health DCAT extends DCAT-AP specifically for health data datasets. And you have properties you will only find in health datasets catalogs like age range or population size. Health DCAT in a nutshell. So I will go through new properties, new control vocabularies, new rules for the minimum metadata elements, what we know as cardinalities. So let's start. First of all, we have extended Health DCAT using existing vocabularies. Very simple, we added a property from the Dublin Core vocabulary. Alternative, it's to give an acronym to a health dataset. But we have also introduced new properties based on the data privacy vocabulary, like legal basis, or data quality vocabulary, like quality annotation. We are aligned with StatDCAT, for instance, or mobility DCAT, having a property being able to display for dataset a quality label. Then we created a new namespace for Health DCAT with its own properties like code values, health categories, or population coverage or retention period. That's properties really specific to the Health DCAT domain. New control vocabularies. Based on the article, I was showing you the data and scope of the EHDS regulation. We will have a new control vocabulary with listing all categories. We will have also a registry with the health data access bodies, meaning in each member state will implement a new body, a new organization named Health Data Access Body, and this organization will manage the the National Health Dataset Catalog. So we will have a registry. We will also rely on Wikidata as an ontological health database, and we will have some other control vocabularies like publisher type, specific for health. New cardinalities and usage notes. Here I'm going to dive in more details. Let's have a look. So a health data holder will have to provide information on the access rights. Is my data open, or is my data protected, or is my data sensitive? And that's very important. From this, we will have for 3 sets of minimum metadata elements, but for each of them, so open data, protected data, or sensitive data, in Health DCAT, distribution, a dataset distribution is mandatory. So we expect to have always a link to access the data. If it's sensitive, this is going to be a landing page of a health data access body. If it's open data, of course, you will have a direct download link in the metadata record. Then, sensitive data. I was mentioning the fact for sensitive data, we will have a landing page. And this landing page, as I showed to you, is a data access application like this one. This is going to be common for whole health dataset. We will have a common data access application. That's an important information. Then also one requirement for sensitive data, we expect in Health DCAT to have a sample distribution. So a subset, an anonymized sample, or synthetic data. And here you see we are expecting to have, in case of sensitive data, a sample distribution. But we would like also to extend Health DCAT using the tabular data on the web vocabulary, also known as CSVW terms, for describing the dataset. So we expect to have data dictionaries with Health DCAT descriptions. The draft version of Health DCAT has been published online, so you are all invited to visit this link. You will discover something I'm not covering now, is that we've got, for instance, a property for dashboards allowing the discovery of the sensitive data, for instance, but with a disclosure to be GDPR compliant. So please go there and visit the Health DCAT application profile and provide your comments, because it's a community exercise. You can post your question in the chat, and at the end of this session, I will be happy to respond to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pascal. Thank you so much for this presentation. We have already received a lot of questions. We will try the best to answer them in the end of the session. So now we will focus our attention in the Common European Energy Data Space. So I would like to give the floor to Stavros to introduce us and give us more information regarding the policy concept of the energy data space. Stavros, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot, Flora, and thanks for inviting us. So indeed, in the next couple of minutes, I will walk you through the energy data space, and mostly the policy. I will give you the policy context and a bird's eye view, let's say the high level use cases that we have identified. And I have invited two colleagues that they work hands-on on developing the interoperability framework and concrete use cases that will, dive a bit deeper into the what we call energy data space. So our data space was adopted in 2022, 2 years ago in October, under the what we call digitalization of energy action plan. That was an initiative to address the increased digitalization of the energy system. So there we introduced a number of actions. And as you may see on the top left part of this slide, the data framework, data sharing framework, or the data the energy data space, it was the first priority. And indeed, the energy data space was first announced and adopted under this action plan with concrete use cases. And if you allow me, I will give you a big, I will draw you the picture of the problem of the energy system. The energy system is becoming extremely complex, and I'm talking about the power grids. The old model is dying, so we had the model of the centralized generation, transmission, distribution network, and the demand point at our households or the industries or the businesses. This model does not exist anymore. The energy system is extremely decentralized. We have demand and generation of energy at all parts of the grid, right? So we have our photovoltaic panels on our roofs that produce electricity. We have wind parks, either onshore or offshore, that they feed electricity into the system from all different places, not necessarily where the demand is. And at the same time, we have demands that they fluctuate during the day or during the week, depending on the weather. This starts getting too complex, and we have to, not we actually, the grid operators, they have to address this complexity with smartness, right? So they're introducing all these digital systems like digital twins and sensors at the edge of the grid to improve the observability of the grid. And this is very good, and our action plan is accelerating this transition. But there are all these different elements that they're connected to the grid. They need an orchestrator, an orchestration. They need to speak to each other, to a common language, so that we can optimize this integration. And here comes the energy data space. So all this communication requires exchange of data. So at the action plan, we have identified 3 high-level use cases to facilitate the exchange of data with the overall vision to develop a data sharing framework for innovative energy services. So this is the key word here. So we want to facilitate the provision of these innovative energy services on top of the power grid. So these 3 high-level use cases are the flexibility services, smart and bidirectional charging of electric vehicles, and energy efficiency in buildings. And I will use this slide that was developed by an expert group, a commission expert group. It's called Sustainable Transport Forum. And I use it only to give you the complexity of a very simple use case, as we can think of it, like the smart charging of electric vehicles. This is in a very simplistic way. When you plug in your car, it charges at an optimal time. So not, for example, when you plug it in, but when electricity is cheaper or when electricity is abundant in the grid. But to make this happen, this figure illustrates the complexity of the different actors that they need to speak to each other, exchange data, and facilitate the provision of these services. So it's an extremely complex task, and the energy data space comes to play a role there. So to facilitate all this communication and the exchange, and I like to use this example because it's not only an integration of different players, different actors on a system, but they come. It's an ecosystem from two different sectors, right? So you see here on the left the energy sector, and on the right the mobility sector. And in the moment, in the intersection of these two sectors, the connection point. So it's the charging point, for example, of the electric vehicle. So we have came up with CEEDS architecture. CEEDS is the Common European Energy Data Space, which includes several components. I will not dive into this graph because the speakers after me will explain how the system works. Here, this is just to mention that what we are building here is a federated system. So data remain where they sit. So in data infrastructures that they are either owned by member states or by equipment manufacturers, for example, electric vehicles, battery manufacturers, or heat pump manufacturers. So the data, the consumption data, are kept usually in their cloud. And what we are trying to achieve with this architecture is to make a trusted data exchange framework to make these clouds speak to each other, so that intermediate players, what we call service providers, they can get access, again, trusted and trusted access to these clouds, so that they can make these clouds speak to each other for the benefit always of the end consumer. This is at the center of our vision. So I will take you through our journey, and as I said, the digitalization of energy action plan, where our data space was born, it came in October 2022, but already prior to that, we had funded a number of Horizon Europe projects to lay the grounds of the common energy data space. And I have the pleasure that the two speakers after me, they come from these two projects. So this project started already in the summer of 22, and they are close to completion in the summer of next year. And I have to say that we have achieved significant results. So what we ask from these projects is to develop the use cases. So what I showed in the beginning with this e-mobility, let's say, ecosystem, to develop these use cases in detail. So what is a use case that a data exchange could generate benefits for the customer, for the end user, and for the energy system? So we got a number of use cases very well analyzed, including the data contributors, the type of exchanges that need to be done, and in the end, based on these use cases, one of these projects, IntNet, and Antonello will explain later, created an interoperability framework. So this architecture that I showed before. At the same time, if you see the two red dots there, we have completed two studies, two scoping studies from ENTEC, one consortium, and the ETIPSNet, a technology platform that advises the Commission on several technical issues, to further analyze the needs and the concepts of the data space. And I can already tell you that very soon we will have what we call a deployment project. So in May 2024, we published a call under Digital Europe program, which is managed by DigiConnect, to fund deployment projects for deploying the data space in at least 10 member states. So in the use cases that they have already been identified by the previous projects, this project has been selected and will start very soon in the beginning of 25. So this will be a milestone for the energy data space. And then the other milestone that I would like to focus a bit in the rest of the presentation is an expert group. It's called SEG, Smart Energy Expert Group, that was established in a couple of months ago in October, and under which there will be a working group called Data for Energy, what you see here in the small .d4e. So this Data for Energy, it's the group, it's a formal commission group, and I will give you some insights about it. It's the place where the governance of the data space will be discussed and take place. So we aim to have this group running as long as the energy data space is deployed across member states. So again, just to give you an idea of the participation, we have 69 members representing most of the players of the energy and the digital domain. We have all member states on board and the institutional, let's say, players, those who manage the European grids and will benefit from this data exchange. This is a short list. No, actually, this is the full list of members, just to show you that the main objective here is to bring everyone around the same table, have the same discussion, and agree on a common set of data sharing principles. So this is the place that we envisage that the data sharing framework will be defined and governed. And again, as I said, the interoperability and data exchange is not the only mandate of this expert group. We are asking from the experts to define the technical building blocks, for example, related to access control or identity management, logging or contracting, to define the use cases, and finally the governance. And before I close, there is a very important work stream for the member states. As I said, the energy data space, it's not a collaboration only between member states. It's a collaboration between existing data infrastructures that they are owned either by member states or by private entities. And this is the challenge there, to integrate all of them into a federated layer of data exchange. So we have a very concrete work stream for member states under this expert group that we aim to bring them together to learn from each other on the national data sharing practices. And this is, we believe it's a very important area of work, because we have identified that, at least in the energy sector and for the energy data, member states, they have extremely different approaches, from no framework at all, or from very centralized or decentralized or hybrid systems. So we do not obviously impose or ask for any concrete infrastructure, but we are trying to understand the different practices between member states, because the overall objective is to bring all these data infrastructures into a common into a common federated network. And again, let me close with that data exchange for us is not for the exchange itself. It's for facilitating smart energy services on the grid with two objectives. One is to make energy more affordable for their end users, and secondly, to make the energy grid more efficient for their operators. So with that, I will finish and will pass on to Antonello to explain you about our interoperability framework.
Thank you, Stavros. And yeah, it's my pleasure now to introduce the project Internet, developing an interoperability community, the Internet project. So the Internet project is a coordination support action funded by the European Commission, as Stavros already anticipated. As you can see here in this fact sheet, we are involved in several institutions across Europe. and we are tackling the problem of interoperability in the energy systems, in which, of course, the development of a common European energy data space is a big part of the activity. But let me give you a broader view of what the project is trying to achieve. We set for the project different objectives. First of all, we have been working on consolidating a common knowledge base for interoperability. We have developed a comprehensive interoperability maturity model. We want to define the conditions to create a framework for interoperability testing using a network laboratory, and then facilitate a community that will survive the project. So the task here is, first of all, to assess what interoperability is right now in the energy services, making that progress through the data space, and then guarantee a future for this effort so that we have a way to establish interoperability within the energy services also in the future, and so create cooperation across Europe on this topic. Some of the activities, as we anticipated, the project are quite advanced at this moment. So the first part on identifying the interoperability activities around Europe has been completed. We have put together now a repository with more than 100 international initiatives that have been analyzed and described. We also deliver an accompanying document so that everybody in the energy sector now can have out of this document a very complete overview of the different initiatives and in a coordinated and organized way. We have also been delivering a concept, this eminent, that's the name we gave to this activity, which means evaluating the maturity of interoperability for the energy transition. So it's a process fundamentally that allows any actor in the energy sector to assess what is the status of interoperability operation. You can imagine this similar to the quality assurance process that was developed beginning, I would say about 30 years ago. So the idea is similar to understanding what quality assurance is within a company, understanding the culture of interoperability. And we define a way to assess and a way to track how this is evolving. So with the task that in the future, companies may decide they want to be active in the energy sector, have the chance to assess if they are properly operating to be a company that deliver products that fulfill the rules of interoperability that have been defined within the energy sector in Europe. But it's critical that once we have the rules, we have a way to check those rules. And so another part of the activity in the Internet project is dedicated at creating a network laboratory and the way of operating a network laboratory that will be able to test. So basically, if you want to imagine the future scenario, a company should first of all be sure they operate according to interoperability principles, thanks to Eminent, and then they should be able to validate any process they have, any product or every protocol, for example, using the support of this network of laboratory. We are defining how this network would cooperate, making sure that resources are available all across Europe. And thanks to other large initiatives of the European Commission, like the EHDS project, those networks are already basically in place. So it's not that we have to start from scratch. We are just aligning as a coordination support action initiative that are being already running across Europe. And another important part in the activity, and that connects to what Stavros already said, in the energy sector, we have been using now for quite some time, thanks to a mandate of the European Commission, the smart grid architectural model, so-called SGAM. And this was a layer description to specify how a service or a product will impact on the energy grid, starting from the component layer, going up to the business layer. When we've been tackling the question of interoperability, we realized that we are proposing as project to expand and to consider also that to make sure interoperability happens, we need governance. And that means that if we want to apply this GAM to a situations in which, of course, interoperability is critical, then we need a framework layer where we look at political standardization, validation, involvement, so that we can have a complete package available. As last part, as I say, the project is also making sure that this is not just a 3 years effort funded by the Commission, but we are linking to different initiatives around Europe and trying to define a methods and approach that will make sure that this discussion on interoperability continue. First of all, we created a community network, and you can join this community. Just visit the website of our project. You find instruction to be part of this discussion. And at the same time, we are understanding how this community will survive the project, link into other initiatives that are already happening in Europe, so that this work will go beyond the funding schema. But within this structure, as mentioned, one of the key elements important for the interoperability, because that's where the bulk of data exchange should happen. And the Internet has been working as coordinator of the different initiatives in the area of data space. So in that sense, supporting the European Commission in the development of the common European energy data space. As mentioned, there is a set of projects here reported as inner layer, which are Data Cellar, EnerShare, Omega X, Synergies, and EDDI. You'll hear about EDDI a little bit more in the next presentation, but those are the core projects that are developing the components and the architecture that are then supposed to be critical for data space in the future. Same time, there is an outer layer. These are other projects funded by the European Commission that are anyway dealing somehow and using resources from the inner layer to develop first case of application of data space technologies in the energy sector. These are TwinEU, Edge IoT, Begonia, Interstore, and Odeon. And the role of Internet in the middle is to make sure that those projects talk to each other and that we go for common solutions. So at the same time, giving the freedom of the project to explore as innovation action new solutions, but at the same time, find a way to build common elements so that the transition, as mentioned before, to the implementation action that should start in January will be smooth because we have been already working towards a common direction. And as a result of this work of coordination, a very important document has been prepared and is actually a living document for which we have several versions. We are right now at version 2.0. And this is called the blueprint of the common European energy data space. And here we go through the different business use cases that will be considered the key element for the data space, the definition of an architecture, and of course, currently with Internet, the discussion about interoperability element. This document is freely available. You have the link here in the slide, and we are constantly working on updating, so there will be at least a version 3.0 before the end of the Internet project. As part of this initiative and aligned with what the European Commission has been also doing, we have been exploring and detailing more the use cases. And here you have some little bit more detailed description of use cases where we see value for a common European energy data space, and of course are very much similar to the concept you heard summarized in the higher level initiative of the European Commission. So you'd see a use case one on collective self-consumption and optimized sharing for energy communities. Second, on the residential home energy management, integrating distributed energy resources and flexibility. Then use case 3, TSO, so transmission system operator, distribution system operator coordination for flexibility. Use case 4 is the electromobility, services, roaming, load forecasting, and schedule planning. These are all activity within the larger use case already mentioned on smart charging, and as number 5, renewable O&M optimization and grid integrations. If you see, these are just a little bit more detailed description of what are the 3 key use cases mentioned by Stavros in direction of flexibility, e-mobility, and smart building. As introduced also in one slide by Stavros, one of the key activities in bringing this project together has been the definition of a proposed architecture. And the key message is the federation. So as you see here in the slide, we expect that in the different grid operators in the different countries, there will be different platforms. We don't see as possible to envision that the energy system, even if complex, will converge to a common, unique platform. This principle already was, let's say, discussed in a previous large project called OneNet, in which emerged, discussing with different grid operators across Europe, that each country, because also the peculiarity of the regulation in each of the countries, has been already working toward digitalization, so developing solutions and platforms, and will not make sense to enforce on the top. And then it's critical to build on top of this freedom of platform, let's call it, a level of interoperability. And this is what the data space can bring. And in particular, then the data space connectors as a possibility to exchange data across the platforms. For the vision is critical to enable, in particular, exchanges between the different operators, both at the same level. So, for example, in the same country between distribution system operator, or in neighbors also distribution system operator operating across, close to the border, and of course at the international level, in any case, among the different transmission system operators. On top of the connector, of course, there is a level of federations, which is what makes the data space possible, where we have the common building blocks like identity management and so on, that will be vice versa in the common European energy data space standardized at European level. This is not just a PowerPoint, let me say, because when we talk about data space connector and to facilitate solutions, a concrete solution is already available for the energy sector. This is the OneNet connector. I've been developing the project with the same name and released as a full open source project, now available also within the Linux Foundation Energy, so that any actors in Europe, any actor can join the community, develop further the connector that is fully based on standard using the energy sector like common information models, so that operators don't have to change anything in the way they run data internally, but they can easily and smoothly integrate into the data space. Currently, the internet activities in relation to a data space are mostly focused on dataset and semantic model. We identify this as one of the most critical activity that we have to complete by the end of the project. And we started from specific use case and having the customers as key point of our analysis. For that reason, we started from the analysis of different solutions for smart meter, data exchange in the range to reach in interoperability among the different data exchange at this level. The activity is mostly led by one of the projects in the internet, which is in the internet network, which is the Omega X. But we are jointly developing further this semantic interoperability, and with the idea to come to a concrete demonstration very soon, so that by first quarter 2025, the different data space projects that are active independently will demonstrate interoperability of data exchange at this level, showing that, as I say, even if we have separate initiative, there is a coherent and coordinated activity among the different actors. With that, I gave you an overview of the Internet project, and of course, happy to answer any questions in the following. Thank you very much, and I give the word to the next speaker.
Hello, Sivan. We have exceeded a bit the time, but you can take more time to go through your presentation. No worries.
Thank you so much. I will try to be quick. So, hi everyone. Good morning. This is Shivam Kashyap, working as a research associate and project manager at University of Applied Sciences, Upper Austria. And I take this opportunity to share the stage with the wonderful minds to present selected use cases of EDI, that stands for European Distributed Data Infrastructure for Energy. Before diving into the use cases, this is the driving force behind EDI, our large consortium spread across the whole of Europe, with the expertise ranging from industry, academia, and research as well. But quickly going into the project EDI core vision, the idea of developing this integrated distributed energy data space relies on 4 fundamental building blocks, each focused with one particular goal. So the first one is to fetch historical consumption data or energy generation data from different member states. The idea here is to get the data from different existing national data structures. For example, could be a national data hub or a metadata administrator, from where, depending on the member state, that we can access data. The second one is for near real-time data, where we have a dedicated component which we are developing. It's AIDA. It stands for Administrative Interface for In-Home Data Access. And this is responsible for connecting behind the meter assets to fetch near real-time data from the sources. The third component is to fetch publicly available data, for example, price feeds, weather forecasts, and so on. And the fourth, another important component, is the data marketplace, which seeks to connect data seekers with the data owners. Based on all these 4 components, we have this integrated energy data space, which can provide energy services, for example, energy communities, energy traders, system operators, flexibility service providers, and so on. Numerous use cases can be enabled with such data space. But due to the time constraints, we are providing 3 selected use cases to demonstrate the 3 ones are the net zero homes, carbon accounting, and virtual power plants. So the first use case, using energy data space for optimizing residential energy in the future net zero homes. The idea here is to integrate different resources. It's not just the electricity grid. People are becoming more from shifting from consumerism to prosumerism here in case of energy, and then they have different assets being in their proximity. So for one of the asset could be this electric vehicle, where we talk about vehicle to grid or bidirectional energy transaction between the home and the electric vehicle using ISO 1511820. Then some stationary storage systems, for example, a home storage system of a battery pack. It could help us to, or it could help the home owners to help in grid emergency load management and provide ancillary services to the grid. We support this through the communication is supported through IEC 61850-7, and then the energy communities. So it's a hot topic now. We support SIM, Common Information Model, that's IC compliant for behind the meter assets for DER, Distributed Energy Resources, IEC 62746-4. Also supporting the homeowners to participate in the energy markets. So we are enabling this pan-European access for flexibility based on IEC 62325, and then definitely connecting with the grid, but not just connecting to the grid to fetch electricity, but rather to fetch the data itself, also to help optimize the grid in the longer run. So that is the first use case. The second use case is about a very pressing issue at the global level, that is the carbon accounting. So when we say that there are climate change initiatives happening, how do the organizations measure their initiatives? So the organizations can measure their initiatives using EDDI, for example, here. So as in EDDI, we provide a harmonized interface for data access through different member states. So this is one of our example where the consortium partner FlexiDAO is using EDDI instances or EDDI data space to connect to different member states to fetch hourly consumption data, energy data, and production data, and so on. This is integrated, cleaned, and processed into the relevant insights, and then this is given to the clients of this particular demonstrator, where they can the clients can access the insights to the dashboards and can also export the data. A point is that also many big players of Fortune 500 companies are the clients of this initiative here, and this relies on EDDI there. So EDDI enables the granular scope 2 carbon emissions or carbon accounting. Renewable energy procurement decisions are made in a more informed fashion. But then it also supports renewable energy contracts, certificates, and emissions at one place, and helps to understand 24/7 carbon-free performance and the related KPIs. Coming to the third use case, that is for virtual power plants. It helps in facilitating renewable integration and demand-side flexibility. So with the democratization of energy systems and more renewable energy assets or distributed energy assets coming into play, the things are changing very rapidly from the current state. In the current state, when we have very limited assets, most of the hardwares are proprietary or at least have proprietary connectivities. Limited is spread across the member states, and lies a difficulty to synchronize master data. To address these issues and to facilitate VPP, we need the envisioned state to handle a lot of assets at the distribution level. The hardware should have the open APIs. Harmonized market APIs should be available across different member states so that there is less time to the market for such applications, and there are no regional silos to provide these such applications. And then we need also real-time DER switching and master data synchronization with guarantees of origin. And here EDDI kicks in again. How EDDI supports this is as we are developing EDDI for providing DER master data synchronization, operate across different member states through harmonized interfaces, also providing automatic metering and consumption data acquisition, and then also supporting in the real-time DER monitoring through our AIDA component, supporting automatic BRP balancing party responsible for switching and tracking of guarantees of origin across different value chains. As I said, we are not restricted to one particular region, but we have a pan-European view where we are covering most of the countries of the Europe, but except going even beyond, we are covering Australia, USA, and UK. Then what Stavros already mentioned, the new project for deployment of the CEEDS framework is here. Just for a glimpse, it's NCMA being used or developed based on the existing data spaces or in the energy domain. And we are again coordinating this, happy to do that, with 16 million budget and 60 European partners across different countries, with 14 deployments across 16 countries to be there. Yeah, thank you so much for this. I would be happy to answer your questions. Feel free to reach out to us on our websites and email me also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sivan. Thanks actually to each one of you for the presentations. We have received a couple of questions. I will try my best to go through them, the most of them. I would like now to ask all of our speakers to open their camera and join us for this Q&A session. I see Antonello, I see Pascal, Stavros. Perfect, and Melody. So I already see that there is a parallel discussion going on in the chat with Pascal. I will start with a question related to you, Melody, and if you feel that Pascal has to also to step in, feel free to give also your side. It's more on the European Health Data Space and the regulations. So how does the European Health Data Space relate to the data governance regulation, specifically in the context of data cooperations and data altruism? And what is the relationship between the European Health Data Space and the Data Act?
Thank you very much for these questions. So maybe just to set up the context, in the European Data Strategy, you have those two horizontal legislations, the Data Governance Act and the Data Act, which basically set up the rules to share data from public entities in the Data Governance Act and data from private entities in the Data Act. And then you have all those sectorial data spaces, as I mentioned, that are foreseen. Today, I think we foresee 14 data spaces, and the European Health Data Space is the first one. What you can say is that the European Health Data Space builds on top of the rules provided for by the Data Governance Act and the Data Act, similarly that it does on the GDPR or cybersecurity rules, because it provides specific rules for sharing health data, whether they come from public entities or private entities. I can elaborate further, but from a legislative perspective, we can say it's we are close to a lex specialis. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you, Melody.
Flora,
Pascal, if you can add from your side, yes.
Yes, from the Data Act for the design of a Health DCAT application profile, you can look at the Article 33, where it's written in the Data Act that you have to expose your data in a harmonized way. Reason why we have introduced in Health DCAT the use of CSVW vocabulary to let's say to expose at least the data dictionaries in a harmonized way. So this is one requirement we took from the Data Act. Article 33.
Thank you, Pascal. And now I would like also to address a question to you. So regarding will the Health DCAT-AP provide guidance on, for example, how to fill the conforms to attribute regarding the description of the datasets field structure?
Okay. First of all, Flora, I've seen many questions in the chat. I've tried to answer them. I can just say to the community, please send your questions. I will address all of them. And specifically about, for instance, this one, we want to have we need, first of all, for sensitive data, of course, that's data you can't touch. That's personal information, that's GDPR. There's no way to touch the data. Nevertheless, the EHDS is there to support research teams. So you will be able to access sensitive data under conditions, I must say. But in Health DCAT, what we've tried to do is to create rich metadata records. So if the data is sensitive, you will have access to the data dictionary if there's no copyright on it, and that's also important. I say this for all companies which will have to expose their data, and if they have copyrights, of course, they don't need to show all the data set, but they have to inform the community that these data set exist. So we would like to have data dictionaries in an harmonized way, and we would like also to have samples. And we all know that currently there's a really a boost with AI. It's not fictive, it's a reality. So we want also to have synthetic data so that you, for instance, if you want to develop a AI agent for medicine, you have access to synthetic data so that you can train your models.
Thank you, Pascal. I will have now a last question for both of you, Melody and Pascal, and then I will move to the Common European Energy Data Space speakers. So it's one related to the stakeholder impact, meaning how will the European Health Data Space change the way relevant stakeholders, for example, GPs, nurses, work? And what new processes or learning will be required for these professionals to align with the European health data space?
Thank you very much for this question, because it mostly relates to primary use, in fact, of health data, the primary use provisions of the regulations rather than secondary use. When it comes to, so I will tell you a little on primary use in a bit, but just to start on secondary use. The Chapter 4 of the regulation mandates for all data holders to describe their data sets and to make them available. However, the definition of the data holder was largely discussed with between the co-legislators, because, of course, we cannot imagine every GP in Europe or every nurse to describe the data they collect using a Health DCAT application profile. This would be very difficult. So the obligation does not apply to SMEs and individual entrepreneurs, although this can be created by member states, and member states have the possibility to create intermediary entities to comply with this obligation for a broader number of healthcare professionals. So different situations. If you had an individual GP, you will probably not have the responsibility to comply with Health DCAT application profile. However, you will probably have an overarching structure that will help you to do this. And if you work in a hospital, the hospital, because it's not an individual entrepreneur, will have to comply, but the responsibility will be on the hospital and it will not be on the individual GP. Hope this was clear. When it comes to the primary use of health data, the regulation gives a number of benefits for healthcare professionals. The most important one is the fact that for an individual, you will be able to travel across Europe, and for any GP that you will see, this GP can access your medical record in his language. And that is a big news. And for example, you broke your leg in Berlin and you're from Helsinki, you can ask the German doctor to access your medical history, to see your allergies. The information will be translated in his language. And when you get back to Helsinki, your GP in Helsinki will be able to access the medical report from your care in Germany. So this will facilitate the flow of information also for GPs. Sorry, I was a little long, but many benefits, not only on secondary use, but also on primary use with the EHDS regulation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Melody. I think it was very important to share this. And I will now go to change the floor and go to the Common European Energy Data Space speakers. We received a question. It's for you, Stavros. I think you answered the one related to the future of the Common European data space. The second one was, how will the Common European Energy Data Space support the EU's goal of achieving climate neutrality, particularly in terms of prioritizing energy use and promoting renewable energy sources?
Excellent. Thanks a lot. So indeed, as I said, the use cases, the high-level use cases were selected 2 years ago when we were drafting the digitalization action plan, and they served two or maybe three objectives, I could say. First of all, was to make energy more affordable for the users, so households or companies. The second objective is to facilitate and optimize the management of the electricity grids. And thirdly is to maximize the integration of renewables into the system. So I think this pretty much answers the question why the use cases were selected and how these contribute to the climate neutrality targets, right? So as I said, the objective of optimizing, for example, integration of renewables, this is self-explanatory how this contributes to the climate neutrality, but also the flexibility services, it optimizes, it maximizes the efficiency of the grid. So when, for example, the distributed resources like your electric vehicles or the panels that you have on your roof can provide services, can feed in electricity to the grid when it is needed, instead of switching on a gas-fired plant, for example. This is an exceptional use case that demonstrates this climate neutrality of the use cases. So, and it serves two purposes: one, to the system, to the energy system, and the other to the end users, that they can monetize these resources that they have in their households, their heat pumps, their cars, or their rooftop panels. So this is pretty much how this contributes to the climate neutrality and the EU goals.
Thank you, Stavros. I think it's very important what you shared with us. I'm following now to the question for Antonello. The question is, can you name some of the initiatives that are you collaborating with outside of Europe? And are they any other use cases that you are planning to work on? I think this is also related to you, Stavros, the second part.
Concerning cooperation outside Europe, I can mention two initiatives that are happening within the framework of projects funded by the European Commission anyway. One is a project called Orion, which has a lot to do also with data space, because at the end there is a target to develop a concept of digital twin, and digital twin can only happen if there is a data space in place. And in the framework of the project Orion, where my university is involved, we have a collaboration with Brazil and one with Canada and with the local universities, so that we are trying to align the development in this direction also with these two countries. Another initiative is within another project funded by the European Commission called Interscada that we just started, in which we have a cooperation with Taiwan. And the idea is to develop, in this case, we are working on developing new services for grid automations, and to do it as an open source. And that will be the point of cooperation with the utility running the grid in Taiwan, in which this exchange can happen. In general, I will say the Linux Foundation Energy is a large framework of cooperation beyond Europe in the framework of open source solutions. So there is very much going on in this exchange connecting to data space. The OneNet connector is a project in the Linux Foundation Energy. So that's an example where that is happening. Remind me, the second question was about?
The second question was regarding the use cases. That are there any other use cases that you are planning to work on, and how did you select these specific ones?
Yes, there are other use cases. This can be found particularly if you have a look at the Twin EU project, In the Twin EU project, we have a very large consortium, more than 70 members across Europe, with a goal to develop a digital twin of the complete European electricity infrastructure. And grid operators, in that respect, are using data space technology for different purpose than just flexibility. Now, the flexibility is small, but it's just one of the problems grid operators are facing. And in Twin EU, they are looking at issues like stability, and data space will facilitate exchanges among operators that will guarantee a situation awareness much better than what we have today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Last question, and this is for Sivan, and it's always the worst when you are the last speaker, then you have to be fast and be also fast when answering the last question because we're exceeding time. But thank you so much, Sivan, for your patience. Do you collaborate with companies to further promote the granular carbon accounting? And do you have some examples to share?
Yes, definitely. So the partner I mentioned in the slides is our consortium partner, which is promoting a close collaboration with other corporates for big names such as Google and so on. But nevertheless, ERIC is envisioned to be an open source data space, so anyone can use it and provide this service further.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sivan. And with this, I would like, first of all, to thank all of you, thank all of our speakers for joining us today. And obviously, we would like to recommend to all of our audience to stay up to date with our 2024 activities. We have a last webinar for 2024 taking place in 2 weeks from now on smart cities and digital twin technology, where we will have the policy background coming from a smart cities marketplace policy officer, as well as a case study coming from the Rotterdam city. Once again, please share your feedback. I already see that you start sharing your feedback with us, so scan the QR code and share the feedback. And thanks once again to our amazing speakers. Thanks to you, Stavros, Antonello, Sivan, Melody, and Pascal. And I'm wishing you, all of you, a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.